This, in so many ways, is the Shabbat that keeps on giving in blessings, because we now get to hear from Eric Rosen, who I have been so privileged to learn from and with in this last year, and looking forward to hearing from you tonight. Thank you.
This one? Okay. I'll use this one. I'm not going to be offended if you can't either hear me or discern what I am saying. Raise your hands. I won't be offended at all. Shabbat Shalom. And Noam, where's Noam? Noam, you did a great job. You're a tough act to follow, and I'm really glad that I heard what you had to say. Okay. So, every time I'm always appreciative of the clergy here who yield their time on the bima so I can deliver a sermon, and I'm very appreciative tonight. And I also want to thank my long-lost cousin, Rabbi Rosen, who is on Zoom tonight, who helped me with the sermon and edited it for me. This week, this Shabbat, there are two parshiot, Matot and Maseh. And each time I deliver a sermon, I learn how just a word or a sentence can lead to so much thought and reflection, as did my preparation for this sermon. It was really unanticipated, the road that it took. Maseh includes recounting the travels of the Israelites from the Exodus in Egypt, where they are in this Pasha as they are about to enter the Promised Land. I quote from Numbers 33, verses 1 and 2. These are the journeys of the children of Israel who went out of the land of Egypt by their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. Now Moses wrote down the starting points of their journey at the command of the Lord, and these are their journeys according to their starting points. Now, I'm not going to go through all 38 starting points. In fact, I'm not going to go through them at all. But the Israelite journey has served as a metaphor for each of our journeys throughout our lives. Commentary on commentary has brought this metaphor to life. And for me, it is especially gratifying to rely on a commentary written by a person whom I know, whom I respect, and whom I admire. And in this sermon, I applied the outstanding commentary written by our own Rabbi Harper in her terrific book, Loaves of Torah. So thank you. Turning to Rabbi Harper's commentary on the Israelites' journey, here is what she said. When has your life taken an unexpected twist, or a particular path turned out to be more winding than expected? How did you feel when you were in the midst of that journey? What were your emotions when you look back on it? If you could go back and visit yourself at the midpoint, what would you say to your younger self? 52 years ago today, I started my first job out of law school in Washington, D.C., and I'm sure I never anticipated then that I'd be delivering a sermon in this congregation in Wellesley, Massachusetts. I left that job after 3 years for what I thought was a better opportunity. It was not. And when my new firm broke up a year and a half later, I had to look for another job. And again, what Rabbi Harper said, when has your life taken an unexpected twist, or a particular path turned out to be more winding than expected? How did you feel when you were in the midst of that journey? What were your emotions when you look back on it? Looking back on the journey, I said to myself, why did you ever leave that first job? It was a good one, and now you may be unemployed. So I went to the placement office at George Washington University Law School, where I went to law school, and there was a job posted, and I looked at it, and I said, you're not qualified for that job, and I wouldn't get it. The job was in Boston, where I grew up. I left the placement office without applying for the job, and then I said to myself two things. Eric, it's a 10-cent stamp. What do you have to lose? And the second thing I said to myself in Yiddish, and I won't quote what I called myself in that particular moment, but I'm sure you could probably guess what it was that I had to say. Anyway, I returned to the placement office, I applied for the job, I got it, and spent 18 years at a job that I love with people who have become lifelong friends. I left that job 29 years ago, and a bunch of us are having lunch next week in Providence, and many of them were here for the April 5th interfaith service. That is only the beginning of the journey that I want to talk about tonight. Many of you who have heard me speak here before know that I lost my father 6 months before I was born. He was killed serving in the United States Navy in the South Pacific. So about a month before I was to start my new job, his brother, my Uncle Barney, contacted me and said, he lived in Worcester, and he said, "Eric, I'm dying of cancer, and I would like to get together with you again." I hadn't seen him or members of my father's family in 20 years, actually since my bar mitzvah. I spent the last year of his life learning about my father and his family. I reconnected with him, my uncle, and the Rosen family. And I never anticipated the joy that I've gotten from those connections. When I thought about returning to Boston, I didn't even think about my father's family. And there is more. Last October, I received an email from a distant cousin on my father's side of the family who went on Ancestry. And on Ancestry, I came up with a woman no one in our family had any idea who she was. And I don't know the DNA matches, but it was high. It was 13. It turned out that this woman was given up for adoption in 1940 by my father's aunt, my great aunt. She lived in Randolph, Massachusetts, and she and I connected, and we had lunch last December. And the story gets even better. First one. So we learned in getting together with my great aunt, with the child that my great aunt gave up for adoption, that my great aunt had an unmarked grave. So with Susan Karen's recommendation, we engaged a person who does gravestones. And so my cousins and I got together. We paid for the gravestone. Here it is. And on the 18th of August, a couple of my cousins and I, and my new cousin, her name happens to be Rosen, will be unveiling that gravestone. And in attendance will be her 2 daughters and her 4 grandsons who had never had any contact with her biological family. And she has been so gracious about her contact, and God works in mysterious ways, because as I got to know her, of course, she was given up for adoption. She found me on Ancestry and had just gotten her adoption records available to her because they were confidential at that time. So she and I got together. She's going to be at the unveiling, and her adoptive parents were a childless couple in Dorchester, couldn't have their own child, and they found her and they adopted her, and she had a wonderful life with them. And now she's had the connection with her birth mother's family. And recently we found out who her birth father is, and that's a story that I can't tell tonight. There's still one more to relay to you. About 3 or 4 months ago, I received a letter from someone I didn't know. His name is Matty, and he found me on Ancestry, and he said, "Are you Samuel Rosen's son?" And I said, "Yes." I wrote back, I contacted him, and said I was. Now, this young man is now 36 years old. He has spent the last 11 years looking at the war memorials in towns in central Massachusetts, Marlborough, Hudson, and other places, and he sees the names of the men and women who lost their lives serving their country, and he said, "There's something wrong with this, because we have their names, but we don't have any of the stories of these individuals." So what he has done without any recompense, without any real public appreciation, contacted people and put together stories that are going to be displayed, in my case, in my father's case, who lived in Hudson briefly, with the Hudson Historical Society. Okay. Next one? Yes. So I didn't know Matty. He came to my house, And he photographed all the pictures I had of my father, his medals, the other mementos I had, and he put this together and sent it to me. So there's a pictures of my father, his medals, with him and my mother on their honeymoon. They lived together as husband and wife for 17 days. So I have this picture from their honeymoon. That's my father's watch. And he just did this out of the other goodness of his heart. I call him a saint. I believe he's Catholic, but Rabbi Rosen said in our tradition, he's a tzaddik. And I hope I'm going to send him the link to this, and hope he gets to listen to it. So, final question from Rabbi Harper: if you could go back and visit yourself at the midpoint, what would you say to your younger self? Eric, chill. I really wouldn't say that. I would say, you never know. I left a job that I liked, found a better one, connected with my father's family, met my wife of nearly 46 years, who's here listening to me tonight. I joined TBE, and I never would have anticipated being in a community that is so dear to me that has become over the last 8 years. And none of that would have happened had I not left the first job that I had, returned to the GW placement office, and applied for the job I got. So it all works out. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.